this bonus episode of Mating Matters. I'm Dr. Wendy Walsh with producer Brooke Peterson. Mating Matters is a podcast about human mating strategy. We look at human mating through a lens of evolutionary psychology. And by opening up the entire game board, I hope it will set you free to make better choices and maybe even forgive yourself sometimes. Because human mating can be treacherous and it can also be filled with feelings of joy and security. So our caller is a young man who left a message for me that I found fascinating because it illustrates what's going on in our evolution as human mating creatures. So I thought we would get him on the line and hear a little bit about his story, and then he can pose the question to us. We have hooked him up by Skype. Hi, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for calling our line, and thank you for listening to Mating Matters. Tell me a little bit about your question and the background of it.
Yeah, so I was curious about just talking about your Mating Matters podcast, kind of differences in how men and women relate to each other, and especially with the alpha males one. I think there's not really a large focus in our culture on looking at male promiscuity, and I think it's something that's it's something that's relatively new too in the last 20 years of invent of Tinder and all the social dating apps. And I think there's been a kind of a separation between men who seem to have a lot of options and men who don't. So I was calling in because I've had a daughter recently. I had a daughter back last June, and so it's been really making me re-examine a lot of my behavior over the last 5 or 6 years. I'm 24 years old, so I've been obviously just graduated college last year, and I had a really interesting college experience. We went to 3 different schools. The first one being in Florida as a Division I basketball player. And then for the last 3 years, being up in the Midwest, and having that experience is really, I think, quite different than a lot of people have during college. For one thing, women do tend to kind of throw themselves at athletes, especially Division I athletes, and I'm extremely tall, which doesn't hurt. And,
right. So in the episode, I don't know if you listened to the episode called "The Trouble with Testosterone," I basically describe some men who fit your stereotype, if we will, tall, deep-voiced, muscular, athletic, and that women often prefer these kinds of men for short-term relationships because unconsciously they know the genes are so healthy. However, some women also think that they can turn this short-term relationship into a long-term relationship. So before we get too deep into it, let me ask you, did you have problems with women who are trying to do that?
Oh yeah, that's pretty constant. What's funny is I've had women tell me a lot that they look at me as a short-term thing. A lot of times they'll choose me just because they are bored, they broke up with a boyfriend, they just kind of think, oh, he'll be fun, he's attractive, and what often ends up happening is, you're right, they'll try to turn it into something longer. And there's a time last fall where I had, I think, 3 women that I had known for the last couple of years basically proposed to me almost. It's nuts to think about because I'm very open and honest with how with whether I see it going forward or not.
So I want to interrupt you to just say 2 things. One is that a lot of women enter short-term relationships believing it will be a short-term relationship, but a woman's body emits so much oxytocin during female orgasm that they start to bond. They report feelings of love if they're having consistent sex with somebody. But the other thing I want to say is I have a question for you. The women who told you clearly that you were a short-term goal for them, what did that feel like to you?
I actually kind of took it as a compliment. Because the women who had told me that were extremely attractive women I had been pursuing. So I didn't take it as anything negative because again, when I'm looking for a short-term thing, if I'm not looking for something long-term with someone, then that's completely fine with me. But again, I'd probably be offended if I had put a lot of time into it and then pursued something long-term. They look at me as just a fun project. That'd be a little bit disconcerting. But
so let's go back to the beginning. So you didn't know your mate status until you got to college. You had one long-term girlfriend in high school. Tell me about how you discovered that you were a high-status mate.
Well, that's so funny. So in middle school and high school, I was always so jealous of short guys. And I was just so tall at such a young age. I mean, I was 6'8" at 12 or 13 years old. So I was just extraordinarily
Wow.
tall, very thin. Yeah. And, they were probably intimidated, or they probably just didn't know what the heck was going on, but I was always just very observant of how women, were always into the short guys. So I go through high school and maybe just casual, like maybe like a prom date or a homecoming date, but nothing that was ever serious, never led to anything, sexually at all. And then I graduate. My first party at college, I remember it was my first night there, and I go to a frat house, and this is down in Florida, so it's super nice and hot. And this guy is with frat guy, no idea who he was. He had just a bottle in his hand and some like blonde woman just around his waist, just holding on to him. And he's like, "Hey man, you want to take a swig?" And so, I took a swig of it, and it was funny because I hand the bottle back to him, and I remember it so clearly. She looked at him, looked at me, looked at him again, and then just with no subtlety, whatever, just left and just went right on to me. And then I was just like, "Oh, okay." And the next months were just a whirlwind. I mean, I was blown away by what to me was just the complete 180, from when I was in high school and I felt almost gawked at by women, and kind of just looked at like, "Oh geez, look at that, freak," almost. And then just completely flipped to like, I mean, it was like shooting fish in a barrel. And it was, yeah, it was pretty shocking. And honestly, it took me a while to get over.
So you are
you know
24 years old. How many
right.
sexual partners do you estimate you've had so far?
It's probably almost 200, I would say, maybe.
It's only
Yeah,
one a
probably
week.
around that.
I did a little math. That's only about one a week.
Only about one a week. Jeez, that's terrible.
So, but your question on the voicemail was very heartfelt because you expressed some kind of confusion about what you're experiencing. And it's interesting to me because it seems like this awakening, if we can use it, is happening around the birth of your daughter. So let me first ask the question, what was your opinion of women when you entered college? Did it change over the course? And now that you have a daughter, is it changing again?
So I think I have a pretty nuanced view that hasn't changed much, since the birth of my daughter, in the exception that, when she was born, it really kind of, man, I don't know. I remember like the first time I met her, and really feeling, well, first just an overwhelming sense of just, holy cow, she's gorgeous. But I think as she gets older, it'll be more dawning. I mean, it's kind of a slow turn where I'm starting just to. It's hard for me to say this. I try to understand, I guess, what makes the core essence of what being a woman is, and I don't know that yet. I'm still pretty jarred by some of the experience I've had with women, where I've been really shocked by and appalled, really, by some of how just heartless and horrible it can be. But I mean, that's just humans in general.
Well, yeah, could you give
horrible
me an
truth.
example? What do you mean by heartless and
Oh, yeah. I had I had a girlfriend who had cheated on me previously, which was very hurtful experience. Probably 4 years ago, maybe. Um, I've had I've had relationships with women where they've had boyfriends the entire time and didn't tell me, didn't disclose it, and just having, I mean, doing things that you would typically think are still male stereotypical behavior, but women doing it and almost getting away with it because they put off a vibe of like, oh, I'm just so innocent, pretty, and sweet. So it's definitely taught me a lesson of looks have nothing to do with, obviously, with character or with
with
behavior. So
ethics or morals? This is a delicate question. Would you like your daughter to date a man like you?
that is a mixed answer, which is probably not what you're looking for. But I would love her to date someone who is as confident and ambitious as I am. Although a lot of ambition came after she was born. That really lit a fire in my butt. Yeah, I want her to date someone who has confidence and strength and is strong enough to protect her, and also an alpha male that will make. Because I know that technically women like alpha males, so I want her to find a man that she's enthralled by and that will really protect her. But I don't want her to date someone who is, just to be frank, as much of a dog as I have been. I don't want her to, and that's something that I hope to teach her. That's something I've kept it in my head. I've told my friends and family, I'm going to keep it absolutely real with her as she gets older, because I want her to know just what to look for. I'll be able to tell what a man is, hopefully, when she brings him home. I'll be able to look in his eyes and kind of judge his behavior and how he talks. And I'm hoping that I will be able to put that in her and be able to let her know when she judges men to look for that.
Did you know there's
But
research to show that girls who have a close relationship with their fathers tend to have later onset of sexual experience for sex and also better relationships, romantic relationships? So I think you're going down the right road there. Let's go back to you for a minute. So you called because you're experiencing some feelings of confusion. Tell me about that.
yeah, this is something that I feel like I'm complaining and I shouldn't be complaining. That's honestly how it feels to me. I know a lot of men that have just struggled to get girlfriends. Like I have a roommate that I don't think has had a girlfriend since we moved in. It's been almost a year. And I'm feeling distressed because it's just starting to dawn on me, like these very shallow, quick, or even if they're long term, they never seem to satisfy, like, as the time goes on, like, the deeper emotional needs. But yeah, I don't know. It's just weird because I don't feel like I'm in a position to complain at all. And when guys talk about their girl issues, I'm just sitting here like, I have plenty of options, but I'm not any happier than you are, like,
Okay,
if that
so
makes any sense.
first of all, I'm going to pull you off the guilt train. You have
Okay.
every right to feel all the feelings that you're feeling. And I want to explain some of the cultural and evolutionary underpinnings of your experience. So
Sure.
you are wired to reproduce. You are wired to spread your seed. However, back in our anthropological past, the 4 million years of ancestors that lie in your blood, in their entire lifespan, they probably never laid eyes on more than 150 humans, and most of them were related to them. So therefore, evolution designed a certain kind of man with a lot of testosterone to leave the tribe, if you will, leave the encampment and go across dangerous terrain or oceans looking for different genes. And so as a result, it is a natural instinct for you to want to copulate with a woman who's a different set of genes. Now, the problem is it's today's culture where thousands of new romantic opportunities are a thumb swipe away, or on college campuses, they're in bars and dorms, they're everywhere. And so what's happening is your ancient urges are being tweaked all over the place. I use the comparison of salt, sugar, and fat. Salt, sugar, and fat were trace nutrients in our anthropological past. They were so hard to come by, but they were important nutrients. And now we know, because we have an undying craving for salt, sugar, and fat, that every food manufacturer has loaded their processed food with these ingredients because it makes us respond to them. We know that if you want to be healthy in today's time, you have to use your intellect to say, you know what, I'm not going through that fast food restaurant, or I'm not going to have that sugary dessert. I'm going to eat something that's healthy for me. Because we're not just animals. Biology isn't destiny. We are also thinking, feeling, amazing brains. So the fact that you've hit this kind of moment of questioning or exploration, if you will, around the birth of your daughter makes sense. I always say that grown-ups have kids, but kids produce adults, because it's when we really start to look at the world through the eyes of our children and make different decisions. And so here's your problem, and here's how the problem has been. Two things. One is, just from a physiology standpoint, we can train our bodies for anything. A sumo wrestler trains their body one way. A marathon runner trains their body a different way. You stand them side by side, they are nothing alike. The same goes with our sexual behavior. You can train for monogamy. You can train for promiscuity. You unknowingly have been training for promiscuity, right? So this, you've got it down. You're almost bored with it. It's like, what's another one, right? And am I telling the truth?
You are. Yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head here.
Okay. And so the way to train for monogamy, and monogamy is where you get all the other benefits of relationships. You see, long-term relationships are really good for our health. Just non-sexual touch and sexual touch produces all kinds of neurohormones, dopamine, norepinephrine. I mentioned oxytocin, the cuddle hormone, and all this reduces cortisol and helps calm us. We are really meant to be connected to others in an intimate way. So you get those benefits. You get the benefits of emotional support, knowing that somebody's got your back. as I've said in some of my other podcasts to women, men generally don't fall in love through sex. They fall in love through trust. And unfortunately, they tend not to trust a woman who gives them sex quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in a weird place because you're sort of the stand-up man for any woman who wants to just sort of have a fling and have her short-term relationship. And I'm actually surprised that, I guess because of the messages from our culture, that you always take that as a compliment because, you're being objectified by these women as a physical object, and it's not giving them a chance to see your brain and your heart and your morals and your ethics. How does that feel when I say that?
It's interesting. I would have to agree. And to be honest with you, I think it's on the fault of me for then, initiating the sexual relationship after that point, right? Instead of forcing to say, hey, look at me as a person instead of not as an object, which ironically is exactly what women, are saying to me, like exactly the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So the way, okay, so here's what happens with our human body. When we move towards sex too quickly, that amount of physical intimacy is a little bit overwhelming. So we need to become protective. So generally, when people begin a relationship with sex, they tend to hold back on the other pieces, which are emotional intimacy or even intellectual commitment, right? 3 prongs of love are lust, emotional intimacy, and commitment. And so people, when they begin with sex, know intellectually, well, this is not the time to make a commitment. We're not running off to Vegas to get married. I don't even know this person. But they're also almost shy or ashamed to be emotionally intimate at the same time because it's almost too much. It's too overwhelming. So my advice to all genders of people, if they are at a stage of life where they're looking for a long-term relationship with all the emotional benefits as well, is to start off with the emotional and actually say to somebody, I'd like to explore what it is to get to know you as a person. Can we wait a few weeks before we have sex? Not even months or years. And there are all kinds of reasons why people choose to delay the onset of the sexual relationship. Sometimes for them, it's for religious reasons, and sometimes it's because they really want to evaluate a potential mate. And what we've done historically is put that pressure on women. We've told women, shut your legs, wait, be a good girl, develop a relationship first, evaluate him, because the risks of sex were so much higher for women. I mean, women, because of our unique biology, are more likely to contract an STD. Because of the fact that we emit so much oxytocin, we're more likely to fall in love through sex. And we're more likely to contract an 18-year case of parenthood, let's face it. So guys have less risk, so they wait for women to delay the onset. But now, of course, we have the pill and condoms to protect women. Women have their own financial security in many cases. So they don't need marriage in the same way. So I think the onus is on all genders to slow down the pace of the sexual relationship if, in fact, it's a time of their life where they're ready to look for something more long-term. What does that feel to you?
That's well said. That's really well said. I agree. Yeah, and the thing is the thing I've been struggling with is that the temptation, though, of new and exciting and
it's your drug. It's your drug.
It is a drug for sure. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and it's just, you hit one little roadblock and you're like, exit plan, and you have plenty of exit plans. You have plenty of, and it's increasing with age. That's something too that is distressing. Is I think, all right, I thought, okay, this is a college thing, or it's a young college thing, and it's just as I got older, it's become, the window of opportunity has even grown more. So
it is distracting because remember, it's just like somebody who struggles with obesity and is trying so hard to not have sugar, trans fat, and salt. And every time they pass a McDonald's, there's some junk food sex. That's what you're having, is junk food sex. And you have the ability to take your brain and apply it just like you did for your hard training in basketball and your academics. You're clearly a well-educated, well-spoken young man. Is you have the ability to use that prefrontal cortex to go, this is a drug. I'm off this drug for now. And it doesn't have to be like, okay, I'm going to quit sex and be abstinent for a year, because that's not actually growing, that's avoiding. But more like you meet someone you find interesting and you say, hey, can we take a few weeks? Can we take some time to get to know each other before we have sex? And, it will up the ante, because everybody wants what they have to work for a little bit, right?
Oh, for sure.
I
For sure.
I often say no is the world's biggest aphrodisiac. So
that's for sure.
it will make, when the sex finally happens, I assure you it will make it that much better.
Yeah.
But it will give you time to assess whether this person could be a good mate, a potential good stepmother for your daughter. I might suggest that you go shopping for a stepmother for your daughter.
That's a good way to put it.
That's really
Good way to put it.
the job description, right? That's the role that you're going to need.
Yeah.
And then you got to know that for a lifetime, you are going to have to deal with the fact that you will constantly encounter so much sexual opportunity. But how much time are you going to have to really explore you and what your emotional needs are?
Yeah. And that's something that I haven't really had a chance to do. I used sex as definitely as a drug, like you said, especially during basketball, because it was just so hard. I mean, it was incredibly hard. Any Division I athlete will tell you that it takes your whole life away. So very little limited amount of time. You have very little emotional energy to spend because you're so emotionally tied to the sport and your performance.
But what you have not experienced yet is how good it feels to have someone know you deeply, and someone that you can trust to always have your back and be loyal. That's a great feeling too.
For sure.
Well, I really appreciate you calling. Did I answer your question at all?
Yeah, you did. You did a great job. You did a phenomenal job. So thank you. I just was so curious to hear your thoughts on it. I think I think my situation is a little bit unique. Like, I'm insane when I think about it myself. I have no idea what the hell's going on. So I just rather hear from an expert like you.
I felt like this young man is reflecting the struggle of so many young men and women today who are trying to figure out the complicated nature of human mating. Just 50 years ago, the rules were so straightforward because they were culturally set. And now we're going back to something maybe more ancient in our evolution. But as I mentioned to him, during the course of our lifetime, we probably never laid eyes on more than 150 people. And so this opportunity for junk food sex is something new for humans to contend with. I really encourage everybody who's listening to think about how to have higher quality, greater nutritional relationships.
I had a dream that romance was dead, and then I woke up in the morning with a new girl in my bed. We'd met the night before when I was pissed, as we stumbled out the nightclub. She gave me a kiss, and we had junk food sex.
Mating Matters is produced in partnership with iHeartMedia. It is researched, interviewed, and written by me, Dr. Wendy Walsh, and it is edited and produced by Brooke Peterson. People don't learn about podcasts usually by just searching around. They learn about a podcast because somebody who loved that podcast told them about it. So I encourage you to please subscribe, write a review, and more than anything, hit that share button now. Think of somebody who would like to hear this information as much as you enjoyed it. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at Dr. Wendy Walsh. Listen to Mating Matters on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks for listening. I'm Dr. Wendy Walsh.
Well, it's 10:30 in the morning, and I don't even know her name. 'Cause we had junk food sex in a stranger's bed. But why do these one-night stands all come with such clumsy hands? Are we making love, or did I get too drunk? Is this another blatant fuck, or did I feel a loving hug?
If you'd like to call the Mating Matters message line, you certainly can. The number is 323-207-8277. That's 323-207-8277. If you got a question, we want to hear it. Or maybe you have a comment. Either way, we love to hear from you, our listener.